Imagine, stepping off a ship
Oh, yeah.
onto British soil,
Right.
heart filled with hope for a brighter future,
Yeah.
only to be met with suspicion and hostility.
Mm.
This is the reality
Yeah.
faced by hundreds of Caribbean people who arrived in England aboard the Empire Windrush 75 years ago.
It's a story that I think continues to resonate today.
Right.
Not just as, a historical event, but as a reflection of the complexities of immigration,
Yeah.
identity, and belonging
Absolutely.
in a nation grappling with its past and its future.
We're diving into the heart of this story, unpacking its nuances and drawing insights from a conversation with Trevor Phillips,
Okay.
a leading voice on race and equality in Britain.
Mm-hmm.
He co-authored the book Windrush, 75 Years of Modern Britain,
Yes.
and offered some powerful perspectives in a recent interview on the Rest is History podcast.
Yeah, it's really worth a listen.
Now, it's crucial to understand that the arrival of the Windrush
Yeah.
wasn't some grand scheme orchestrated by the British government.
It wasn't.
These were British citizens embarking on a journey they believed was their right within the empire.
Absolutely.
So their arrival wasn't necessarily a surprise, but the scale of it
Right.
and the subsequent reactions certainly were.
Precisely.
Okay, so paint us a picture.
Picture this. Britain, 1948,
Okay.
still reeling from the aftermath of World War II, faces labor shortages.
Right.
Suddenly, the Empire Windrush docks at Tilbury, carrying nearly 500 Caribbean migrants.
Wow.
The government wasn't prepared for this influx,
Right.
and their reaction exposed a deep-seated clash between the ideals of a global brotherhood within the empire and the realities of racial prejudice that existed in Britain.
This idea of a global brotherhood intrigues me. It sounds almost utopian, especially considering the historical context.
It was a concept heavily promoted within the empire, this notion of unity and shared purpose among its diverse subjects.
Right.
But the arrival of the Windrush exposed the hollowness of that rhetoric.
Because in reality, non-white British citizens were not treated as equals.
Exactly.
It's kind of a bait and switch.
It really was.
Right.
Their arrival challenged the existing social order and triggered anxieties that revealed a disconnect between the idealized image of the empire and the lived experiences of many of its subjects.
Phillips argued that the government's initial response was more about bureaucratic bewilderment than outright hostility.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
It's almost as if they couldn't grasp the idea of people taking such initiative within the empire.
Yes. He pointed out that the authorities were accustomed to controlling the movement of people within the empire.
Right.
The notion of individuals independently choosing to migrate challenged their entire worldview of how this system was supposed to function.
It's fascinating how something as seemingly simple as choosing where to live could disrupt an entire power structure.
You got it.
Now let's delve into the motivations of the Windrush passengers themselves.
Okay.
It wasn't solely driven by economic hardship, was it?
Absolutely not.
So there was more to it.
Yeah.
What else was there?
While economic opportunity was certainly a factor, many were driven by a sense of adventure.
Right.
A desire to carve their own paths, and an ambition to achieve something more than what their home countries could offer at the time.
So it sounds like there were push and pull factors at play.
Definitely.
Phillips used the term transient mindset to describe the perspective of many passengers.
He did.
Can you elaborate on what he meant by that?
Well, he explained that this mindset was common in cultures with histories of displacement.
Okay.
For many, the initial plan was to work for a few years in Britain, save money, and return home as successful individuals.
Kind of like a, almost like a business plan in a way.
Yeah, like an investment.
Yeah.
It was a stepping stone, a temporary journey to a better future back home.
There's a real sense of agency in that decision.
There is.
They weren't simply fleeing hardship. They were actively pursuing a better life on their own terms. And the way they dressed when they disembarked the Windrush speaks volumes about their intentions.
Oh, tell me about it.
They arrived in their Sunday best,
Right.
a tradition in Caribbean culture signifying respect and the importance of the occasion.
Yeah, they really wanted to make a good first impression.
It's as if they were dressing for the start of a new chapter in their lives,
Yeah.
a chapter filled with hope and ambition.
Exactly. This journey was a momentous event for them.
Yeah.
A calculated move, a leap of faith toward a brighter future.
It must have been both exciting and terrifying.
Oh, absolutely.
Leaving everything behind to start anew.
Yeah, a real mix of emotions,
Right.
and they were determined to present themselves accordingly.
It really highlights the complexity of their motivations.
It does.
It wasn't just about escaping difficult circumstances. It was about exceeding expectations and returning home as accomplished individuals.
I got it.
But as we know, many ended up staying in Britain, transforming what was intended as a temporary stay into a permanent home.
Right.
What led to that shift?
Well, that's a great question.
Okay.
That shift from temporary migration to permanent settlement is where the Windrush story takes a fascinating turn. One of the key factors was the arrival of more women and the formation of families. Life took on a different meaning when children entered the picture.
It's understandable. Uprooting a family is a far more significant decision than moving as an individual. And as those children grew up in Britain, their sense of home likely shifted as well.
Precisely. The pull of home as a distant concept might have faded as their lived experiences and relationships became deeply rooted in Britain.
Phillips also mentioned the element of pride. Many felt a strong desire to avoid the perceived humiliation of returning home before achieving their initial goals. It wasn't just about economic success, it was about fulfilling a personal promise.
That's a crucial point. It speaks to the strength of their ambition and their determination to prove themselves not just to others, but to themselves as well.
But let's not forget that this was all happening against a backdrop of racism and discrimination. The first generation of British-born Caribbean children faced a reality vastly different from their parents. They were British citizens by birth, yet often treated as outsiders.
This raises a profound question about identity. How did this generation reconcile their sense of belonging in a society that often made them feel unwelcome?
Phillips argued that their sense of belonging wasn't rooted in some abstract notion of Englishness imposed upon them. It came from the concrete reality of their birthplace. He offered a striking example, saying, "I'm a Londoner. What's wrong with you?"
It's a powerful statement that encapsulates their lived experience. It's a rejection of imposed identities and an assertion of their right to define their own sense of belonging.
It wasn't about choosing between being Caribbean or British. It was about embracing both their identity was forged in the unique space between those two cultures.
That's an important distinction. It highlights the fluidity and complexity of identity, particularly for those navigating multiple cultural influences.
And the Windrush story becomes even richer when we consider how subsequent waves of immigration from South Asia and Eastern Europe added further layers to Britain's multicultural fabric.
The Windrush story is often viewed as the starting point of modern multicultural Britain, but it's crucial to remember that it's just one chapter in a much larger and more intricate story.
And Phillips cautions against making generalizations about immigration. Each wave brings its own distinct historical context, cultural nuances, and challenges.
He emphasizes the importance of recognizing those differences, of avoiding the trap of lumping all immigrants together under a single homogeneous label. It's about acknowledging the richness and diversity of experiences within the broader narrative of immigration.
One aspect of the Windrush legacy that can't be ignored is the emergence of a large mixed-race population in Britain. Phillips argues that this is a significant development not just domestically, but globally.
He called it the most significant dual heritage population born since the war anywhere in the developed world. This demographic reality challenges traditional notions of fixed racial categories and presents a unique opportunity to explore the complexities and richness of having dual heritage.
And he emphasizes that this mixed-race population emerged organically through relationships and families rather than through coercion or historical circumstances like in other parts of the world.
It speaks to the evolution of social dynamics and the changing landscape of identity. It's a testament to the power of human connection and the blurring of lines that were once considered rigid and unchangeable.
But as Phillips points out, society is still grappling with how to understand and navigate this new reality. There's a learning curve, both individually and collectively, in embracing this multifaceted view of identity.
Absolutely. It requires a shift in perspective, a willingness to move beyond simplistic categories and embrace the nuances of lived experience.
And this ties into Phillips's call for a shift in how we view Windrush and Black British history in general. He urges us to move beyond a solely white-centered lens.
He encourages us to actively seek out diverse voices and understand the richness of the Caribbean experience beyond just reactions to racism. For instance, he highlights the role of the church, a central aspect of life for many Caribbean people, yet often overlooked in mainstream narratives.
It's about reclaiming the narrative and understanding the full spectrum of experiences that shaped this community. It's about recognizing the richness and resilience that goes beyond simply overcoming adversity.
Exactly. And this brings us to the Windrush scandal, a painful chapter that shook Britain a few years ago and brought these issues to the forefront in a stark and unsettling way.
The wrongful detention and deportation of British citizens of Caribbean descent reignited debates about belonging identity and the enduring legacy of empire.
It was a harsh reminder of the fragility of belonging, even for those who believed they had secure roots. It exposed the deep-seated prejudices and systemic failures that persist even decades after the Windrush generation arrived with hope and optimism.
The scandal really brought to light, the question of who gets to define Britishness and what the criteria for inclusion are.
Exactly.
It forced a reckoning with the nation's past and the ways in which those historical injustices continue to shape the present.
It highlighted the gap between the rhetoric of a multicultural society and the reality experienced by many people of color in Britain.
Yeah.
It raised questions about citizenship, belonging, and the very essence of what it means to be British.
It's interesting how the Windrush story has been adopted by others as a symbol of their own immigration experiences.
Really has, hasn't it?
Some argue that it transcends its specific context and speaks to a universal human experience,
Yeah.
a yearning for a better life and a struggle for acceptance in a new land.
It's true that the Windrush story resonates with many who've faced challenges related to immigration and belonging.
Right.
However, Phillips cautions against conflating different narratives.
Okay.
He emphasizes that while there are shared experiences, it's vital to recognize the unique cultural and historical context of each immigrant group.
So it's about acknowledging both the common threads and the distinct journeys. It's about understanding the nuances and avoiding generalizations.
Precisely. Each group's story deserves to be heard and understood on its own terms without erasing its specificities.
As we reflect on the 75th anniversary of the Windrush, what are the key takeaways from this deep dive? What can we learn from this complex and multifaceted story?
One of the most significant takeaways is the importance of understanding history from multiple perspectives. The Windrush story demonstrates that there's always more than one side to any historical event. It challenges us to question our assumptions and seek out diverse voices and narratives to gain a more complete and nuanced understanding of the past.
It's about acknowledging the complexities and moving beyond simplistic explanations.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that history is not static,
Right.
but a living, evolving narrative that continues to shape our present and future.
Absolutely. The Windrush story also reminds us of the enduring impact of historical events on our present-day society. The Windrush scandal serves as a stark illustration of how past injustices can continue to shape the lives of individuals and communities even decades later.
Sobering reminder that progress isn't always linear and that we, must remain vigilant in safeguarding the rights and dignity of all members of our society.
Absolutely.
We can't afford to become complacent or to assume that past wrongs have been fully addressed.
Precisely. And finally, I think the Windrush story encourages us to think critically about how narratives of migration and belonging evolve over time. Who gets to tell these stories? Whose voices are amplified and whose are silenced? These are questions that we must constantly ask ourselves as we grapple with the complexities of identity and belonging in a rapidly changing world.
It's a call to action for all of us to be more informed, more empathetic, and more engaged in shaping a future where everyone feels a sense of belonging. A future where diversity is not just tolerated, but celebrated and valued as a strength.
That sense of belonging shouldn't require the erasure of differences, but rather an appreciation of the richness and vibrancy that those differences contribute to our society.
So as we mark the 75th anniversary, we're left with this thought-provoking question. What stories beyond Windrush are waiting to be told about the diverse communities that make up modern Britain? What can we learn from those unique experiences? What challenges and opportunities do they present? We encourage you to explore those stories, to seek out diverse voices, and to deepen your understanding of the rich tapestry of experiences that make up our world.
By engaging with these stories, we can foster a greater sense of understanding, empathy, and connection. We can learn from the past, navigate the present, and build a more inclusive and equitable future for all.
We hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought and inspired you to delve deeper into the stories that surround us. Subscribe for more deep dives, where we'll continue to unpack complex and fascinating topics just like this one. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.